We're going to pass the mic now to Ryan.
Ready, thank you very much. I'll get the screen up here. So first of all, thank you all very much. It's really a pleasure and honor to be included among the panelists today. And I'm very grateful to also be going third, so I got to hear the other presentations first. It helps influence and inform my presentation. So really good to hear from both of you. Thank you, all three of you actually. Thank you very much. So my name is Ryan Rittenhouse. I'm the conservation organizer with Friends of the Columbia Gorge. And we are the only nonprofit that specifically is focused on preserving and protecting the Columbia River Gorge National Scenic Area. For those of you who aren't too familiar with it, the National Scenic Area does have federal designation as a protected area, and it extends from the Sandy River Delta, which you can see there on the map, all the way east out to the Deschutes River in eastern Oregon. And it's on both sides of the Columbia for that entire stretch. It stretches for over 80 miles. And so what I wanted, when I was thinking about what to talk to you about today, really focused on that below the water aspect of it, and figured that it would make a lot of sense to talk to you about what Friends has been doing in relation to wetlands restoration, habitat restoration, especially as it pertains to salmon. There's a lot of issues when it comes to water contamination and the need to rehabilitate water systems in the Pacific Northwest, obviously. But I think most people would agree at the top of the list is wildlife habitat, especially as it pertains to salmon. Salmon is a Native American first food, and it's also a vital food for just everybody living in the area in general. And it's also a vital component to the healthy ecosystem. And there's two big threats to salmon. There's a lot of threats to salmon, but the two primary threats, I think I wouldn't be remiss to say, are dams and loss of habitat, which are interconnected, right? Dams create loss of habitat as well. So if you want to know more about this, there have been two documentaries that have been released in the last few years. One is called Dam Nation, that covers the impact that dams have on the salmon. And there's another good one that was released even more recently called Artificial, and that focuses on the salmon habitat itself and specifically how fish farming enters into that, how hatcheries and fish farms impact wild salmon, which is in a negative way. So yeah, if you have any questions about any of that, I'd be happy to answer them. But those two good documentaries, if you haven't seen them yet, or if you don't know a ton about the issue, can really help educate you on that. So what is this I'm talking to you about today? Well, this specific project is the dashed red line you see there. That general area is the Steigerwald National Wildlife Refuge. If those of you on the call aren't familiar with it, if you were driving along Highway 14 on the Washington side, as soon as you enter into the National Scenic Area, and there'll be a big sign on the right-hand side of the road that says, "Welcome to the Columbia River Gorge National Scenic Area," you have there just entered into the Steigerwald National Wildlife Refuge as well. It's all the land right off to the right of your car. And it's open to the public and accessible. But right now it is not a wetlands. There was a dike built to prevent the Columbia River from flooding into that area, largely because some of the land to the eastern end of the refuge was private land that was used for cattle ranching. Friends of the Columbia Gorge has been working for years with that landowner to purchase that land and to get it prepared to be handed over to the National Wildlife Refuge so that it could be incorporated into the refuge. And then the idea is to breach the dike that has been separating the Columbia River from the refuge for all these decades and return the refuge to its original wetlands habitat. And that will create vital habitat for juvenile salmon in the area. So to give you more of an area, and if you want to keep context, you see Reed Island there. That'll be kind of a good way to keep your context as I flip through these next photos. But here's a historic photo, and there you can see Reed Island there again, and the dashed red line shows the project area of the National Wildlife Refuge. And this is a historic flood. As you can see in the bottom there, this happened in 1948. So that shows you what happens and how wetlands naturally acts as flood control and flood mitigation when these historic floods happen. But what they did was they built a dike all along this barrier here, and that prevents the Columbia River from flooding into that wetlands and using it as natural flood mitigation. It also prevents it from being used as habitat for salmon. And so this is showing you that there again, there's Reed Island, and that black bold line is what used to be private land, private ranch land. And this land over here is the refuge. So Friends of the Columbia Gorge purchased this land, and now we actually just finished converting it over into ownership for the wildlife refuge last week. And so now this whole area is now owned by the refuge. And the project plan, and there again, you see another view of it, this time from the north. You can see kind of how the levee works there. That's the line in green sort of there. And there's Highway 14. But the new project will remove the levee here, and it will rebuild a levee here to protect the wastewater treatment plant and these homes here. But then all the rest of the refuge is going to be opened up to its more natural state. And this is what that's going to look like. So here again, the island is down here, Reed Island is here. Here's the wildlife refuge. Here's the existing dike, and that's all going to be removed. And all of this land and Steigerwald Lake is currently the dark blue you see here, but it's going to more turn into its more natural wetlands habitat. And they're going to still maintain a trail system out there. They're going to build some bridges over the main inflows that are the breaches and the dikes they're going to create. And so this will really create a new a restoration of wetlands that will, I think if I'm not mistaken, it will be the largest wetlands restoration project on the lower Columbia River, increasing wetlands in the lower Columbia watershed by 17%, I believe. And so this is exactly the kind of thing we'd love to see happen more. I don't know how many more locations there are that are open to this within our service area of the scenic area itself, but there's lots of places, as I'm sure many of you know, that have been, industrialized corporate mentality is it looks at a wetland and it just sees it as, wasteland to be filled in and built on top of. So there's lots of natural wetlands that was done to over the decades. And there's lots of opportunity to return wetlands to their more natural state. We would love to see this happen many more places throughout the region. And it ties into what everybody's been saying already. This is more the mentality of working with the land rather than trying to dominate over it. This is the mentality of not what was mentioned earlier with the more native indigenous mentality of working to restore and work with the way the natural systems are supposed to work, rather than trying to impose an industrialized mentality and solution on top of everything. So yeah, if anybody has any questions about the project, I'd be happy to answer them. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Ryan. Thanks for sharing all these details and visuals with us. How exciting! It's really good it's exciting to learn more about this restoration project. Thanks again. So